Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Drive Mix Game. I am testing out our new setup that we have here. I do know that the sound probably isn't perfect. I do have this wonderful, it's a Blue Yeti microphone that I am going to be trying out in later videos. But I think that we should be okay tonight. I am using my AirPods Pro. But basically, what I wanted to do was give you guys some insight on a question that I get asked a lot in the comment section, which is how much fuel do Class 8 semi trucks actually use? And I figured the best way for us to do this is that we'll just find someone who's actually done the test and put it in graphical form. So, as you can see on the screen here, I have a PDF of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And what they've done here is, I guess they have done a study back in October of 2011 on the effect of weight and roadway grade on the fuel economy of Class 8 freight trucks. So let's go into it. So if we go down here, I'm just going to show you the graphical portion that they implemented. So as you guys can see here, green line is elevation, the purple line is fuel rate, and they've outlined here where some major consumption has happened. So, in my career of driving trucks, I would say the best case scenario I've ever gotten has been the stretch of I-95 from Richmond down to Miami. It's incredibly flat, especially in Georgia and South Carolina. Really, really flat. It's really flat the whole way. It's really flat. Florida. I mean, the whole thing is flat. And at the time, I was able to get, it's about, I would say from Richmond to Miami, what is that? A little bit over 800 miles. It's a little bit over 800 miles. So at times I could get 9.5, 10 miles to the gallon. Now that all depends on driver habits, how often you stop, because acceleration, as you can see from this chart, is a major fuel consumption. But let me just give you the examples first. So there's flat terrain, let's say Richmond to Miami on I-95. You're probably going to get better than average fuel economy, regardless of what truck you're in, regardless of the load you're pulling, because once you're up to speed, all you got to do is just maintain that speed. Now, worst case scenario for me, and I'm sure other truck drivers have probably even had even worse experiences out west. I've ran out west in the Rockies a couple of times. There's some serious mountains in Northern California as well, Washington, Oregon. Um, but for me, it's I-68, West Virginia and Maryland. Very, 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 very mountainous, steep inclines, steep decline terrain. And as you can see here in this diagram, this is an example of how taxing that can be on the fuel economy. I've gotten as bad as 2.8 to 3.5 miles per gallon in stretches of I-68 over like 25 to 40 mile stretches, just because of just that long, slow climb can really just crush the fuel economy. And then you have basically what would be like normal conditions, like a normal run. And this is going to be something like, I'm trying to give you something that's going to be fair that most people could probably understand. I'm going to say like I-85 from Richmond to Atlanta. That's probably an example of where you have, yeah, it's not exactly flat. It's kind of like this. There'll be some steep grades and spots, but nothing too crazy, nothing too serious. And there you're probably going to get your average about 6.5 miles per gallon. Now, of course, it could be a little bit worse, it could be a little bit better, depending on the driver's habits. And that translates whether it's manual transmission or automatic. The way that you drive the truck is going to affect the fuel economy. How you hold the steering wheel. Do you make a lot of adjustments when you're going down the road? Do you do a lot of this, or do you hold it perfectly straight? That's tire friction can slow the truck down. What speed do you drive it at? Do you use a lot of cruise control? Are you a pedal to the metal type of person? Are you always trying to pass in the left lane? Are you a little bit more calm and relaxed, and you don't have a problem with cruising at 64 or 65 miles an hour and letting the traffic come around you. All that stuff affects fuel economy. But here on this chart, so that you can see, so this green line here represents elevation, and this purple line is fuel consumption. So you can see here is there's a slight incline going on, and you can see the fuel consumption and the fuel rate. It starts to drop off as the driver is cresting this hill. And then you notice right here in between these two red bars, you see the decline starts and the fuel consumption drops right off. And that's because the truck can now move forward off of gravity, off of inertia. So you don't need to depress the accelerator to actually make it go forward. In fact, as most of us truck drivers know, at this point, you're actually trying to keep the truck from accelerating too much because I might quote this wrong, but I believe in physics, an object in motion will stay in motion until it's acted upon by equal outside force. That's terrible. You guys know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say. So basically, that force there would be gravity and the forward inertia of the truck. And the force that's going to stop it would be engine brake or actual application of the brakes. In Hyliion's case, it would be regenerative braking. That would keep the truck under control, and it would also charge up the battery packs. So, as you can see in this graph here, the fuel consumption drops all the way off, and as the driver continues on this low decline, this would be an example of something that you would see on I-68 in Maryland and West Virginia. Once you crest that hill, now you're on this downgrade and the truck is just rolling. I mean, to give you guys an example, if you were to basically, and I don't recommend doing this, this is very, very dangerous. You should not do this, but as an example, so people who drive cars can understand, if you basically put it in neutral when you crest that hill, you can accelerate up to top speed, and then basically what you're trying to do is knock it back, knock it back. So I don't want to get into descending strategies, stab braking, descending in lower gears, engine brakes or Jake brakes, because that's all different to different trucks. It all depends on what load you're carrying, and how heavy you are, and your driving style, and I guess how fast you need it to get there. I tend to be safe. I usually like to set a gear, even in automatic, put it in manual, and run the engine brake. And I do like to stab brake, but I've never had an accident like that. I've never had my brakes burn up. So that's me. But back to this fuel consumption, you can see the fuel consumption drops up to basically nothing, absolutely nothing on this decline. And then as the driver now reaches the bottom of the grade here on the green line, you can see, and now they start inclining again. Look at the fuel usage just spike up heavy. So in terms of how much fuel a truck uses really depends on where you run. If I had a run from Morgantown, West Virginia to Washington, D.C., and I was coming across 68 back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, or I should say Morgantown, West Virginia to Frederick, Maryland, let's say. If that was my run, my daily run, I'm probably going to average like 4 miles to the gallon on that truck. It's really not going to be good fuel economy. But if I was just going back and forth from Miami to Richmond, and that was my run, or even let's shorten the distance so it's more equal to Morgantown to Frederick, Maryland, Morgantown, West Virginia to Frederick, Maryland. So let's say we were just going from Augusta, Georgia to Daytona Beach, Florida. Well, it would be the same thing, same distance wise, but I would probably average like 10 to 11 miles per gallon. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what a truck will get, but hopefully you guys get an understanding of why it can vary so much. Of course, this is also going to depend on weight, but it will still be relevant. Even if we were in this mountainous terrain here, represented on this graph, and we were completely empty, we would still see something similar. The weight of the trailer and the truck empty is still going to increase the fuel consumption. it would still be better to run empty. So, for example, if we were to go to Augusta to Daytona Beach completely empty, we would probably get like 13, 14 miles a gallon. And if we were completely empty going from Morgantown, West Virginia to Frederick, Maryland, we would probably then get maybe 5.5 to 6.5 miles a gallon that's completely empty. So it's still relative because you're without weight. But I hope that gives you guys an idea of where fuel consumption comes in. And as you can tell by the example I just gave you, best case scenario, you're looking at 10, 11 miles a gallon. Worst case, you're looking at about what? 2.5, 3 to 4. And what's the median right there? It's about 6.5. And the average for a diesel Class 8 vehicle is about 6.5 miles per gallon. And that's how they come up with that number. So to say that a truck would perform better or not better for those of you who are interested in Hyliion, it really depends on where you run it. Where I was running at in West Texas, it's pretty flat, but the loads can be pretty heavy. But we do a little bit, on average, a little bit better than that 6.5, and that's because the other thing that creates a lot of fuel consumption burn is stop and go. And there's a lot of stop signs in West Texas. But as you guys can see by this graph here, basically hills and acceleration is your major burn of fuel. And just as you can see here, when the driver reaches the bottom of this hill, the real reason that this fuel is spiking so much is because the driver has to get back on the accelerator. See, here we're coasting, or we're not really pressing the accelerator to maintain momentum or accelerate downhill. But once we reach the bottom of that hill, we now have to accelerate. And that means applying fuel to the engine, and that is going to spike it. And that is really the major way that I can help you to understand fuel consumption in a truck. Basically, there are times, because the truck is heavy, where you don't actually need to apply the accelerator to accelerate the truck or to maintain your speed. And when you are not in one of those situations, then you can see you are using very, very heavy fuel consumption. A more experienced driver can mitigate this. Automatic trucks obviously help mitigate this as well. But I just wanted to give you guys some feedback and an explanation for those of you who have never driven a semi truck so you can understand how much it actually varies. It's literally to the point where at some points you're using extreme amounts of fuel, and at other points you're literally using no fuel at all. I mean, you're basically just coasting. So terrain is a big factor, driver habits, how you accelerate, how you approach stop lights and stop signs. Do you slow down at a red light and coast a little bit and anticipate when the light will turn green again so that you don't have to come to a full stop, so that you don't have to go all the way through the gears, which will burn a lot more fuel? More experienced drivers will probably try to get the truck down to maybe 15, 20 miles an hour as they're approaching a red light, and then the light turns green, and then they'll get back on the accelerator. And what that does is it prevents you from having to go from a dead stop back up to 15, 20 miles an hour. Now you can start accelerating at 20 miles an hour, and that conserves fuel. It's just an example. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Drive Next Game.